Hey, Ben, we got Vadim on the line. What do you want to ask him?
So when you're talking and seeking out new capital investors, what is your best practice to making sure that you get that connection to them?
One of the big things is making sure that they know who you are in the first place. In business, the saying goes, it's about who you know. It's also about who knows you.
Mhm.
And so the more people that get to know you and what you're about and what you offer, the easier it will be for you to then have those conversations because, well, they already know you. It's a variety of investors out there. And so there is no one catch-all for the best way to raise money.
Yeah.
It's going to work differently for different groups of investors. And so the more specific you can get about the types of investors you're trying to attract, the types of interactions you enjoy, focus on those and you should do pretty well.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Excited for today's show. Really am. I know I always say that, but I am really excited about today's show. I've got second-time guest Vadim Ray coming back as our experienced investor today. And it's always nice to bring a former aspiring investor back on the show as an experienced investor. And then we have Benjamin Yeager with us as well, who should be coming back on the podcast very soon with his first deal, the first deal episode. I think it's a unique episode. Guys, welcome to the show today.
Thank you,
Thanks
Brian.
for having us.
Vadim, for you, this is going to be largely a kind of a checkup, how things gone. We brought you on the show. I was still in Virginia, so it's been over a year and a half ago. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. That last episode, I remember we were trying to coordinate that while I was still in the shipyard.
Yeah.
And we went on a security lockdown right as we were supposed to record.
Yeah, I do remember that. And we were, I think you logged in from a cell phone. We're like, hey, if the connection's good, we'll just start recording, and it worked out. I do remember that. But yeah, brought you on with Megan Lamkey and had a good little talk there, but things worked out well for us. Anyway, let's talk about you. Let's assume that people haven't gone back and listened to that episode. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Vadim. I was born in Ukraine, raised in LA, then went to college in Boston, served in the Navy in the DC area and then Norfolk, Virginia. And then I got out March 1st of this year, 2022.
Okay.
So I have absolutely loved being free and working for myself and having my schedule be mine and my location be of my choice. And it's been a great time. I realized about 3 years ago, trying to figure out whether I was going to stay in the Navy or shift directly into the civilian life, get a regular job, quote unquote. And I spoke with a former supervisor of mine, asked him for advice. And he asked me two simple questions. What did you want to do before you joined? I had no idea. I joined to do something slightly unconventional.
Yeah.
And then have fun. Fun part was not quite happening for me. So that's where I was asking what to do next. And he asked, okay, well, what do you want to do when you get out? I came to you for answers, not questions. This isn't helpful.
Yeah.
And he said, well, something I think is talked about a lot is if you don't know where you're going, then every answer is the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent the next 3 months meditating on the question of what does my ideal life look like? And what I realized is I can't work for somebody else. It's just not in me.
Mm-hmm.
Funny, because I was in the military for 7 years.
Yep.
And I realized that my passion is about helping others live better and do better, make this world a better place. I realized I could do that through real estate where I can buy large apartment buildings, help that many people at once, and then also give myself the financial ability to then work wherever, whenever, doing whatever. In particular, being able to serve the community today instead of waiting until I'm 50, 60, 70 years old. That's the gist of it. I'm sure we'll dive into that some more.
Yeah, and interesting. I mean, similar paths. I spent quite a bit of time in the Marine Corps, but something that I realized a long time ago is when I went to supervisors for career advice, I would say 90% of the supervisors, their choice, they chose to stay in the Marine Corps. And your supervisor was ahead of you. He chose to stay in the Navy. I would say 90% of the time I went to my supervisor with career advice, they would just regurgitate all the reasons they stayed in.
So I think you were fortunate to get somebody who actually gave you some real fair, honest advice, instead of, well, these are the reasons I stayed in, which I got all too often myself. Yeah, good points on that. And so, born in Ukraine, in LA, I guess we'll stay out of the politic thing, with what's going on in Ukraine right now. What were some of the biggest things that drove you towards real estate in general and multifamily specifically?
Yeah, it was actually a bit of the VA loan through the military that directed my path that way. I had heard from several people throughout my time in that, I wish I'd bought a house on my first tour. I wish I'd bought it every tour and just stockpiled a portfolio of houses on every tour. I thought, okay, I don't understand how it works in depth, but I understand that if you keep stacking assets, eventually it'll bear fruit. And then I realized, well, I don't want to wait 20 years to make that happen. How do I shorten that timeline? And I saw, okay, Bigger Pockets talks about, okay, well, you buy a single this year, a duplex next year, quad the year after, and you exponentially increase that. Like, that's still too long. That sounds too slow for me. And it also wasn't tied to, I realized what speaks more to me is helping others in the first place. And so it was less about the size of my portfolio and more the number of people I get to help along the way. And so then I found a group called Active Duty Passive Income by military for military education group, real estate investing education group. And I was part of the first cohort to go through their multifamily investing program, jumped in and realized I could buy 100-unit apartment buildings with a team, of course, and help 100 families with one swing of the bat. I could help all the staff involved in that business plan. I could help all the partners involved, all with one swing of the bat, and then do that over and over and over. And so I realized, wow, I can put in the same amount of effort that would go into just one project by myself and instead help 100 plus families all at once with the same amount of effort, and it would be that much more fulfilling, that much more rewarding.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. And we had similar trajectories. I mean, I did have a handful of single family homes, and I asked the same question, how can I scale this? My model was exactly how you said, is I would move, I'd buy a place, I'd live in it for a bit, and then I'd move out. And that is not scalable. I mean, not at all. I mean, at most you can buy one house a year doing that model. That's how the lending is set up on it. I led myself into multifamily on the same direction, or the same thought process is how can I scale this? And just the idea of going from, I call it a buy one, get 100 resale, when you're doing apartment investing, because you're right, it's a similar amount of effort. It is more effort buying 100 units than one, but it's not 100 times more. But it's a similar amount of effort, and you're getting a lot more bang for the buck, helping a lot more people. Oh, by the way, when you bring in passive investors, you're helping them as well. So Active Duty Passive Income, you got into their mentorship program. I think we actually met in person the first time at was it an ADPI meetup, or was it just a random real estate meetup? It was in Alexandria.
Yes, I think Hema Robles had put it together.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was one Hema put together. But yeah, a lot of people there were in the ADPI program as well. Good group. So any military guys out there, if you're looking for a group to join, ADPI is a pretty decent group of people. So let's talk about how you got into your first deal or first couple of deals. In the Navy, realized that multifamily is your option. How did you go from there to landing your first deal?
Yeah, good question. So one of the foundations of any business is networking. So I jumped into the networking game in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And that's where I met my current partners, Jonathan and Corey. And they happened to be in the Navy as well. They had actually, Melanie McDaniel really is the one that connected all of us. And she was hosting a real estate networking event pretty regularly in the Hampton Roads area. We connected, had talked about different deals a handful of times, realized we were roughly on the same page about how we looked at deals, how we underwrote them, how we considered the business plan, and our general goals for doing deals, which was more than just making money. It was really about taking care of our investors, taking care of our residents, and then knowing that the money would follow. We then got a deal together in the summer of 2020. It was a mixed portfolio. We had 5 properties, 4 sellers. Some of the properties were a master lease option. At least one was an outright sale. We said, okay, let's syndicate. We didn't have the numbers in our JV network. So we said, all right, let's go out and syndicate. And we put together like 350, maybe 400 grand in our capital raise, which is nothing after what we've been able to do since then. But that was a lot for us back then. It worked really, really well for us, the way we put it together, the way we've been running it. And just a few months later, we realized we really liked our partnership style, and we decided to start Fairwinds Capital formally from there. We've been running ever since.
Yeah, and I mean, Fair Winds, great name for a bunch of Navy guys, right? Yeah, I know there's not a lot of, mainsails up on ships anymore, but it still is nice to have the wind at your back, So
Absolutely.
talking about it, I think a couple of things come up there. Networking is key. If you're trying to get into the game, it's a team sport. And you have to network. All right. And Vadim was fortunate and recorded a podcast yesterday with a guy named Casey. And we went into a little tangent where we talked about making your own luck. I said, Vadim was fortunate, but he started putting in the reps and sets, going to the meetups, trying to network. The place where we met, I think you drove up from Hampton Roads area to DC to network with people. You got to put in the effort and you got to do the reps before you're going to land yourself a partnership like that. And that's exactly what Vadim did. Good on you for that one. And that first deal sounds, you said 5 properties, 4 different sellers. You put things together as a portfolio as such and syndicated. That sounds interesting, to say the least.
It was, and the properties were close enough that we were able to make it work and make it make sense, so to speak. And we've actually sold off 4 of the properties since. We have 8 units left. And we've returned all of investor capital, and the rest has been pure profit. So it's been a good run so far.
All right. So with 1 8 unit, when that sells, if that's your plan, or regardless, every penny coming off that is pure profit to your investors, which is
correct.
A really nice place to be. A really nice place to be. Congratulations on that and on your success so far with Fair Winds. So something I like to ask everybody is about their motivations. So what is your why?
Yeah, I love this question. This is one was my favorite to talk about. So I mentioned it briefly earlier. My why is really about helping others live their best lives. It's about paying it forward, because my life has been good enough where I can pay it forward. I grew up in Section 8 housing. I grew up on Social Security benefits. My parents still live on Social Security benefits. And yet I've been able to move on up into being self-employed, having a college degree, having military service. And a lot of that came simply from opportunity, but also access. And it was access provided through other people that really helped pave the way and helped make it a reality, whether financially, whether through effort, whether through connections. And so I recognize that that's a lot of what it takes to help make this world better, is just putting forth good energy, just putting forth good effort and good action. And that's what really drives me. That's really what makes me happy. And I was able to do something that really, it's been a long time inspiration for me over the last few years, really growing up. And it was an opportunity to help run a camp for 2 weeks, sleepaway camp in Northern California near Sacramento. And it was for, the camp is for deaf kids, kids with any sort of hearing loss, and then kids who have deaf family members, whether it's parents, whether it's siblings. And that speaks a lot to me because both of my parents are deaf. And I was able to participate in a similar camp growing up in LA. And I've always been wanting to support this camp. And so I was able, well, now that I'd left the Navy and now that I work for myself and I could actually just take 2 weeks off on my own terms, I didn't have to, I didn't have to ask permission for it. I just gave my team a heads up. They took care of everything while I was gone. And then when I got back, I was able to step back in and support the team again. And it was beautiful to be able to do that because that's directly linked to what I'm doing, creating the opportunity, creating the time, creating the space for myself to give back to the community like that. While at the same time, my very business also helps the community. I can touch on that a little bit later about one property in particular.
Yeah. So why don't we just roll right into that then? I mean, that's going to be the next question anyway. Tell us about one of the deals, but just keep on going. You're on a roll.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got a property in Houston that we purchased back in March of this year, and it's 121 units. The previous owner was just one of those owners. They didn't take care of the property. They didn't take care of the residents. The property looked it. The residents felt it. And when we took over, they were inherently very suspicious of how we were going to run the property. And they just assumed we were going to raise rent and continue running it just the way the previous owner had. While we come in, we start cleaning things up. We start actually literally cleaning things up. There are mirrors in the entry atrium that are they were filthy.
Mhm.
And our property manager got up from her desk, started cleaning them. She had some downtime, and a resident came by and said, "Oh my God, you're actually doing something? You're actually taking care of the property?" And it was something as simple as just wiping the mirrors down,
Mhm.
right? And that's the level of care we appreciate bringing to a property. That's the kind of difference we want to make, where we're just doing the simple things.
Yeah.
We're bringing in property management that cares, property management team that's willing to actually get up from their desk and just sweep,
Yeah.
right? That level of care is something that's instilled in us in the military,
Mhm.
and then bring it out to the regular world.
Yeah.
And I see, Ben nodding his head. It's a basic principle of seamanship. You take care of the home you live in,
Yeah.
and to do that for others is even more special. And we've since implemented community events on site where we've had roughly a third of the properties show up to every event, and that's pretty considerable for especially 121 units. That's a solid, quick math, 40 units, 40 families worth of people that are showing up to events. They're still a little suspicious, some of them at least,
Mhm.
because like, well,
Well,
why
yeah.
are you doing that?
Yeah. Exactly. Like what do they get? What's the catch? Yeah.
Right. And I'll tell you what the catch is. The catch is we get residents that want to stick around longer. That
Mhm.
means less turnover. That means less money going into turnover.
Yeah.
That means we get to focus on sustained operations instead of trying to, okay, well, which units need turnover this time, and how much damage is there to worry about. There's less of that now because we have residents that feel appreciated and are returning that appreciation to the property and to our property management. And so it's this beautiful cycle of goodness.
Yeah, it is. It's, I talk about the golden rule being golden, but there's a reciprocity principle where if you're giving something to some other people, psychologically they feel the need to give back, and it's typically more. Talking about keeping track of properties, I toured a property with a guy that I'll soon be partnering with. And it was a large property also in Houston. And as he's walking around, he's picking up trash. And we're going with the property managers. And he's picking up like a little gum wrapper, and he turns to the property manager and says, "Hey, just this shouldn't be here." And
Mhm.
sticks the gum wrapper in his pocket, and he's walking around and pulling little pieces of paper out of the grass. And I looked at that, and I mean, just the example he was setting for the property management. Number one, it's an example. It's like, as you're walking around, if you see something, fix it. And number two, he was very clear on what the standards of cleanliness were. Just like straight up, this property is not going to be a cesspool. This is going to be kept nice. We're going to attract good tenants, and we're going to keep the good tenants. I think there's a lot to say about how you operate a property. And
Mhm.
while I'm on my soapbox, I mean, when you talk about tenants doing less damage, it all goes hand in hand. If they see that that there's two parts to this. If they see that you're taking care of the property, they're going to be less likely to do any damages, number one. And number two, if you do maintain the property well, you're going to attract a higher caliber of tenant who's less likely to do the damage anyway. So it's all things you talk about. When you take care of properties, residents are happier. They take care of the property themselves, and they're more likely to stay. It's win-win across the board. So anyway, putting my soapbox back in the closet, and yeah, here we go. So yeah, good tips on that, and good lessons learned. So last question for you before we bring Ben on. What's next?
Good question. I mean, this real estate market has been turbulent. So
Mhm.
we've been trying to figure out, we are figuring out an adjustment to our strategy. We've been encountering more challenges than we'd like as lead sponsors. So we're looking to partner up with other lead sponsors who have more of the experience and more of the operational flow built in. And we'll support them with some of the asset management and some of the capital raising as
Mhm.
we build that up until the markets stabilize.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a smart move. Debt is difficult right now. I got a good buddy that's well entrenched into the debt industry, very high up at one of the national lenders, and he may have texted me when he was frustrated, but he's not very optimistic right now on the debt market.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, it's hard to line up good debt. A lot of minor adjustments out there at this point to make things work. So anyway, That said, Ben's been, waiting patiently the whole time. So Ben, welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, good having you on. Obviously, we want to learn more about you. So first question, should be a softball. Tell us about yourself.
Well, yeah, sure. Myself, a little bit of a history and background, I guess we can start off with that is my career path has been similar to Vadim. I've been at sea. I've just been in a bit of the different type of Navy. We've been in the wealthy Navy, right? So I'm former super yacht captain. I still very connected to the industry. Right now, we're in a kind of a break between yachts. COVID kind of shut the world down. We hit a pause with the being out at sea. A lot of ports were closed. And that kind of segued for me and opened up avenue to come into the commercial real estate space. I grew up around it a bit with one set of my parents, live in the Dallas Fort Worth area. So I got drugged to a real estate conference on occasion as a kid coming up. So kind of just had that foundation laid in there. And as you know, a lot of the high net worth individuals who own some of these, 200-foot yachts that I have worked on, a large part of their portfolio, I started to notice a pattern is entrenched in multifamily is one of the tranches that they, have in there along with other parts of the real estate industry. So seeing that pattern over and over for these individuals who I'm working for and the types of freedom it created and the family lifestyles they're able to realize by being good operators and having that as part of their portfolio really kind of sparked that in me to say, hey, flip that light switch and say, this is really, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be out at sea forever. So what am I going to do? Kind of making that transition into, being a landlubber again, right? So
Yeah, and learning from the people who own these. I don't know how much a super yacht is. I actually don't even know, how big does it have to be a super yacht? I didn't get past that part.
right. I think we're talking somewhere in like maybe the 40-meter and up range. So,
Okay.
I've worked on yachts. The largest I worked on was 68 meters.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty large private vessels. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's almost as big as the small Navy ships. I think I was on a ship that I think was about 300 feet. So, about 90 meters is what that would be. So, I mean, when you talk some of these super yachts, you're getting into like naval shipping size. So, wow,
That's
wow.
right. Yeah. Just like, building code and things we have to adhere to on the multifamily side, it's very easy to make the transition because we're constantly running safety checks and checking our equipment and more or less as captain of that, you're running a small city and you're running a team of individuals whose sole purpose is to keep this thing floating and in tip-top shape. Naturally into this industry, I didn't realize that it was going to be at first, but there are so many similarities making that transfer. You're managing a large asset either in the maritime or on the land side. It's been quite an amazing experience making that transition.
Awesome. Awesome. And now you are in Oahu, right?
Right. Yeah, I grew up in Hawaii with one of my sets of my dad. I grew up out here and I left. It took me all these years of, I left for the reason I wanted to travel and see the world for kind of the same reason as Vadim there. I joined, one of the navies in the yachting navy and, I saw the world. And for me, to segue why, right, we do this. I really had the burning desire to have a family, and you can't do that being gone all the time. For me, the reason why I'm in this industry, why I want to build this business is because of family, right? So the name of our business, right, is multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize that is so much about why we do. Vadim was talking about all of the families that we influence along the way, right, in this business. So when we're taking over a property, all of the, you look at the sheer number of individuals it actually takes. So if we did a count on one of our deals, how many families we're actually affecting, whether it be from our lender, our broker, our insurance agent, the tax office folks, all the way to the residents at the property, our property management company, and our investors, most importantly. all of these families that we're affecting. And for me, my why is building a family. For me, I want to create a life where I want to have kids. I don't have any yet. Growing up as a young man, when my dad would come along, put his hand on your shoulder, you feel a certain sense of safety, right? So that's the company culture we want to create for ourselves, for the properties that we're managing. Like Vadim said, it's the simple things. When we're running a vessel, we hold our crew and our team to a very high standard and expectations of how things look aesthetically. Because if you're keeping it good on the outside, you're probably keeping the engines and in this business, the capital turning machine running cleanly on the inside as well. So creating a haven more or less, or a harbor, safe harbor to build a family for my family, in-laws and immediate, to create a life where we can all spend more time together, to create that partnerships with the other general partners who we operate with, and for our investors. So when they're looking at us as a place that they can come to with their capital and feel that safety and that connection of this is I feel good being around these guys, and this is home. So more or less, that's our why, burning passion to spend more time with my family and to spend more time with the families who we are effectively influencing in this business.
Building families. I love that. I love how you said that. You're building families, in several different capacities. Well, hey, Ben, we got Vadim on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Last time I spoke with Vadim, he was in the process of courting a very high net worth investor. So we've successfully got to the closing table, one of our deals, but we're always looking to improve our methods and talk about maybe some of the best practices when it comes to a couple of things. So start off with raising capital. I'll tell you maybe like one of my pain points, and maybe you could share with me what you're doing to mitigate that. Finding new investors. We've been really trying to leverage social media platforms, leverage networking events, and getting people to trade their emails to us for educational value. I oftentimes find out that I'm not getting those emails delivered, and I'm not getting back in touch with those connections that I made. So when you're talking and seeking out new capital investors, like the one that you were telling me about that time, what's your best practice to making sure that you get that connection to them? Do you pick up the phone and call, or do you rely on some other method to attract them to what you're doing?
That's a good question. We could probably do a whole episode on this. So I'll try to keep this as succinct as possible. Every investor has their own style of connection. They have their own reasons for being attracted to you. One of the big things is making sure that they know who you are in the first place. In business, the saying goes, it's about who you know. It's also about who knows you. So the more people that get to know you and what you're about and what you offer, the easier it will be for you to then have those conversations because, well, they already know you. And so it really then boils down to more specific questions, getting to know you maybe a little better, and then diving straight into the actual deal itself. And as I mentioned, every investor is going to be different about how they want to connect. When you and I last spoke, I was courting an investor who prefers to see projects in person. He wants to see it with his own eyes. He wants to touch it, and then he'll invest. And if he's making the effort to actually go see a project, he's pretty much already saying yes. He wants to finalize it by seeing it in person, seeing that the team that's sponsoring it is willing to actually then meet him out there. If you believe in the project, you're going to be willing to meet an investor on site. And that's what that investor needs. Other investors, we've had one who had heard about us through some other people he knows and trusts, heard great things about us. We jumped on a call for about, I think, half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And a few days later, he wired over 300,000. Wow. That was the extent of that conversation. We have other investors who are slow rollers. They are not going to move quick at all. We have one investor who we've been engaged with for over a year, and he finally just reached out in the last couple of weeks to me and said, "Hey, when's your next deal?" He and I haven't spoken in almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
And he's reaching out of the blue asking, hey, when's the next deal? I saw an update about the one I'm in. It's a variety of investors out there. And so there's no one catch-all for the best way to raise money. It's going to work differently for different groups of investors. And so the more specific you can get about the types of investors you're trying to attract, the types of interactions you enjoy, focus on those and you should do pretty well. So if you really like courting investors in person, well then market to those investors that want to meet in person, and you're going to find yourself doing a lot of in-person meetups, phone calls, flying out. If you'd really rather not travel in order to raise money, great. Focus on investors who are willing to do phone calls, Zoom calls, emails, whatever it takes. And then some investors are going to be good with a few emails. I personally don't care for that. I really do want to know my investors on a more personal level. I want to see their face. I want to see how they interact with me, with the world, who they are as people. Do I really want to help this person live a better life? Or is it somebody I'd rather not help, right? There are people in this world who have tons of money to put into real estate. I'd rather never do business with them. And so that's where you have to really get nuanced with the kind of investors you're looking to bring on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple of cents to what he said. I mean, I think that's a great way of explaining it, Vadim. Every investor is different. So try to mix and match how you talk with people. But I think what is also important is you have to have your back end set up. You have to have some sort of way to keep track of it, And for me at first, I was using a Google form. I created my own Google form where as I was on a call with somebody, I could just fill out the Google form, check a bunch of boxes, and set up automations with that Google form to remind me to follow up. I've since migrated. I use Active Campaign right now, but I've set up an automation in Active Campaign to help me follow up with people, because sometimes I forget about that guy that I talked with for the first time 2 weeks ago. But you can set up the automation in Active Campaign that you get on the first phone call, you talk with them, and one click of the button, you can set it up so that I'm going to get a reminder email in 2 weeks to follow up with that person. And at that point, pull out my phone, text or email or whatever. But what Vadim said, I think, is matching the personal aspect, but there's also the background stuff that you can do to help remind you to do that personal stuff.
Right. Well, Brian, I think you kind of answered my second question there. We can aim it towards Vadim. Personally, we use Active Campaign. We're just getting up to speed with that. It's a very robust system that, it's got a lot of avenues. And I think for the people out there who are looking to get active in the space, it would be a good recommendation to check that out amongst other platforms. Besides Active Campaign, Vadim, what systems would you recommend setting up to get more of my personal time back without having to spend a lot of money every month? A lot of people are using VAs, which I haven't got there yet, but I hear that's very effective. I guess for myself, my college career before going into yachting was in the visual communications and marketing. I have a visual communications degree. So everything that we produce, I think it's really important to have a high caliber of production when it comes to what your material looks like, what your website looks like. So what other systems would you recommend to alleviate some of those pains, or what growing pains have you gone through to get more of your personal time back?
Yeah, fantastic question. So we're actually in the process of figuring out some more of the automations. We have a marketing team that's been super helpful, and that's been very worthwhile in terms of the return on investment. Paying the marketing team to handle the busy work of creating posts and actually sharing the posts on social media pages, as well as actually sending out our project updates. We still actually type up the updates ourselves, but the actual marketing aspect of putting the branding on there, cleaning it up, making it look just right, putting it into the template, and then actually sending it out is all handled by our marketing team, but it uses some VAs.
Are you seeing a large response from that now that you've put that into place? And are you seeing a good ROI coming back from that?
We are, yeah. So we've had some investors come through from these marketing posts that we otherwise would not have engaged with. We would not have found these investors. These investors would not have found us had these posts not gone on social media, had our SEO not been operating as it is. And so that's been really, really helpful. And that's where a lot of the time suck goes, is just in that busyness that's really worthwhile. However, that's just the entry point, right? That's just the lead funnel aspect of it. Then you need the conversion aspect. And that's where you have to figure out what your time value is. Is your time value focused on bringing leads in? Which it may be. You may have, you may be able to bring people onto your team that are really good at bringing leads in. You then need somebody to convert those leads. And so if that's where you choose to focus and that's where you recognize that your strengths lie, then it's a matter of capitalizing on the actual conversion process, which also you can bring in some technology aspect into that as well. Like Brian mentioned, ActiveCampaign is pretty good at helping with the lead funnel as well as the conversion process where you do those follow-ups. When you can automate the follow-ups either to remind you to follow up or to just do an automated follow-up directly to the lead, that's super helpful.
Yeah, and with ActiveCampaign, and I think we've talked about it so much that I'll throw a link in the show notes for it. There is a drip campaign. There's a lot of other things you can do to keep in touch with the investors. But yeah, I mean, systems, I'm realizing more and more that focus on the systems. If you really want to scale in this business, focus on the systems. And I think, Ben, great question. How can I get some of my time back? The other thing that I'll mention very briefly, and then, we're out of time, but investor portals. When you're doing these investments, putting these syndications together, having a good solid investor portal is going to help you save a lot of time. You'll be able to just point them to a portal, and it's just a very simple sequence for them to log in, soft commit, sign the documents, wire the funds, and look for something that's very user friendly. And I think that's going to save you a lot of time as well.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. So we are pretty much out of time. So one last question for each of you. Vadim, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
You can find me on our company website, which will be in the show notes, as well as on my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to reach out, schedule time to talk. I'd love to talk to anybody that's interested.
All right. Sounds good. And we'll put that in the show notes again, and you guys can find it there. And Benjamin, same question for you. How can listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. Like we spoke about before, we have active deals. We're partnering with very experienced operators. So if you want to find more about the deals that we are sponsoring right now, you go to groundswellassets.com, or you can just find me at my email address, benjamin@groundswellassets.com. I'm on social media as well, LinkedIn, and you can find Groundswell Assets on Instagram and other social media platforms as well. And always happy to have a conversation around what we're doing and what's next.
All right. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks guys for the conversation today. Had a lot of fun myself, and so glad to have you guys both on.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us, Brian. Aloha.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.